This video is sponsored by Skillshare. It's the night of February 10th, 1970, and Viet Cong soldiers are hiding deep within the Hau Niga Province in South Vietnam. Suddenly, funeral music and shrill whines are heard, blasting from the U.S. Army's Fire Support Base Chamberlain. A mournful male voice is heard exclaiming in Vietnamese, quote, "My friends, I come back to let you know that I am dead. I am dead. I am in hell. Just hell." Of course, these weren't really the sounds of a Vietnamese soldier moaning from the beyond. However, it was meant to pass as such. The audio was fabricated by U.S. forces as part of a psychological warfare strategy called Operation Wandering Soul. The objective was to terrorize the enemies and force them to flee from their position. Some American soldiers agree it's likely the Viet Cong saw right through the ruse. However, it still managed to demoralize and terrify not only the enemy, but also U.S. forces. Wandering Soul is one fascinating example of the psychological operations the U.S. implemented during the Vietnam War. We here at Dark Docs never stop learning new stories from history to bring to you. And we never stop improving our craft. Whether you're looking to fend off boredom, discover new skills to help you advance in the world, or join a like-minded creative community, Skillshare is the place to keep you learning with thousands of online courses. For instance, learn how to use our editing software of choice with the class Video Editing with Adobe Premiere Pro for beginners, or explore the many other online film and video classes offered by Skillshare. We mainly work with archival footage, but maybe you'd like to learn about shooting your own drone videos with the class Introduction to Aerial Videography, Creative Direction for Drone Filming. The first 1,000 people to click the link will get a free trial of Skillshare Premium. Learn new business skills, improve your productivity, and unlock your creativity. After your free trial, it's only around $10 a month. Click on the link in the description below for your free 2 months today. Wandering Souls. In Vietnamese tradition, it's believed that the dead must be buried in their homeland. Otherwise, the person will wander the earth aimlessly and in pain. Currently, Wandering Souls Day, known in Vietnam as Vu Lan Day, is one of the most important celebrations in the country. Locals present offerings to their beloved departed, whose spirits visit the homes on the 15th of every month. Those sinful souls trapped in hell can be saved by prayer. Decades after the Vietnam War, families of Viet Cong soldiers fallen in combat kept looking for their loved ones to give them a proper burial. According to a piece written by Mark MacDonald for the Mercury News Vietnam Bureau, mothers grieved over their sons' lost souls, whose bones hadn't been cleaned and reburied as tradition dictates. The Vietnamese government estimates that over 300,000 of its soldiers remain unaccounted for. In his elegy, A Call to Wandering Souls, poet Nguyen Du wrote, quote, "Strangers have buried you in careless haste. No loved ones near, no friend, no proper rites, and under the wan moon, no kindly smoke of incense wreaths for you." Amid the war, the United States forces started paying attention to this concept of the wandering souls. First, American propagandists released a series of radio broadcasts and dropped leaflets over North Vietnam. The flyers read, quote, "Comrades, demand that the Communist Party stop its war of aggression in the South, so that no more innocent souls have to join the already great number of innocent souls now wandering in this war-torn country of the South." Then, in 1970, the top-secret U.S. military psychological program thought of using the wandering soul concept to torment Viet Cong soldiers. The plot was to record a series of eerie sounds and voices coming from supposed fallen soldiers. The tapes would be played to taunt and create a series of turmoil in the enemies, forcing them to flee their position. Operation Codename Wandering Soul was organized by the U.S. Army's 6th Psychological Operations Battalion in cooperation with the U.S. Navy. Psychological operations were conducted widely during the Vietnam War. According to Time magazine, over 3 million leaflets were dropped every day, containing safe conduct passes and maps showing the way out of communist territory. As General William Westmoreland said, quote, "Psychological warfare and civic action are the very essence of the counterinsurgency campaign here in Vietnam. You cannot win this war by military means alone." However, the effectiveness of such operations remains unclear. Engineering the ruse. According to Sergeant Major Herbert A. Friedman, engineers gathered for weeks in Saigon studio to record the tapes. South Vietnamese voice actors were hired to play the ghost soldiers and did the recordings in an echo chamber. In the tapes, a young girl is heard calling to her father. A man answers her call, saying, quote, "Who is that? Who is calling me? Oh, my daughter, my wife. Daddy is back home with you, my daughter. I am back home with you, my wife. But my body is gone. I am dead, my family. The voice goes on to say that it's suffering in hell, trapped there after a senseless death. Quote, how senseless, senseless. But when I realized the truth, it was too late, too late. Friends, while you are still alive, there is still a chance you'll be reunited with your loved ones. Do you hear what I say? Go home. Go home, my friends. Another tape had 20 seconds of women and children crying. An announcer was then heard explaining that they were the sad cries of families whose sons had died senselessly for communism. The cries would then turn to laughter. The announcer would urge the soldiers not to ignore the sounds of their children playing. Quote, why don't you return at once to rejoin your family? They're waiting for you. One of the audio tapes was named No Doze, a joke meant to imply that no Viet Cong soldier would be able to sleep while listening to it. That recording contained a child saying to his mother, quote, you miss Daddy. I miss Daddy too. Why doesn't he come back? He must not miss you and me. He surely left us, Mother. The recordings also included Buddhist funeral music and shrill sounds, such as moans and wails. The U.S. forces intended the Viet Cong to believe the sounds were coming from fallen soldiers, urging their comrades to defect and abandon the war. Even if the soldiers saw through the ruse, the U.S. hoped that they'd at least be demoralized and afraid of becoming a wandering soul themselves. Vietnam veteran Chad Spar was there when the tapes were played. During night ambush patrols, the battalion would set up small speakers in trees near where the enemy troops were located. Then they'd play the tape for hours, to no reaction other than random shooting. Later on, they'd capture enemy soldiers, who would admit to hearing the recording and feeling frightened by it. Spar claimed that the recordings terrorized not only soldiers, but the villagers too. He said, quote, they couldn't understand the technical side, and being very superstitious to begin with, they believed the message of the tape. The recordings would also be played on loudspeakers mounted on Army helicopters. Squadrons with the mission of dropping small Republic of Vietnam flags and surrender pamphlets would play the tapes while flying over known enemy-controlled areas. This proved challenging for the pilots, since the loudspeakers would block the door gunners responsible for returning fire. The squadrons knew that they'd take enemy fire every time they played the tapes, so the helicopter with the loudspeakers would be escorted by a gunship, ready to attack at the first sign of the Viet Cong. Sometimes they'd play the tapes in conjunction with a device called the laugh box, which the soldiers squeezed to emit an irritating laugh. Lieutenant Junior Grade Tom Burns said about the strategy, quote, it was probably very effective since it gave me the creeps, and I was the one causing it. Captain Blaine Rivas, commander of the 29th PSYOP Detachment, said that helicopters playing the Wandering Soul tapes inspired the famous scene in the film Apocalypse Now, as helicopters blast the classical Wagner piece, Ride of the Valkyries. An anonymous captain of the North Vietnamese Army confessed to the BBC that soldiers were deeply affected by the campaign. After hearing the recording for nights on end, the soldiers felt desolated and nostalgic. However, these feelings only motivated them to keep on fighting. Unintended effect. The strategy was received with skepticism by the rest of the U.S. Army. Rick Hoffman, a member of the 6th Psychological Operations Battalion, said to the BBC, quote, they didn't understand what we were doing. They saw us as some kind of magic show. According to some sources, the operation also provoked some unintended consequences. U.S. soldiers discovered that terrified farm workers refused to work near the fields where the tapes were broadcasted. Allied villagers and militia soldiers were also scared by the recordings and refused to engage the Viet Cong for fear of the anguished wandering souls. 2 weeks after the first broadcast, the Viet Cong had a stronger reaction. As soon as the battalion played the tape, they received accurate enemy fire. It seemed the broadcast was helping the soldiers aim directly at the U.S. forces. It also motivated the enemies to start firing more heavily to drive the evil spirits away. Vietnam veterans told Sergeant Major Friedman that the recordings had also petrified American soldiers. One of them recalled, quote, it kept me awake and scared the hell out of me. The U.S. battalion was also forbidden from playing the tapes within earshot of the South Vietnamese forces, since they were very susceptible to the content. The extent of the campaign's success isn't clear. However, psychological warfare tactics like Operation Wandering Soul were used on multiple occasions both before and after the mission. For example, in the early 1950s, the U.S. military planned to spread rumors amongst the indigenous Marxist guerrillas in the Philippines about a supernatural creature called Huk Bulahap. Later, U.S. soldiers used audio recordings again, this time in the form of heavy metal music, to force strongman General Manuel Noriega out of hiding in 1997 during the U.S. invasion of Panama. Aside from the terrifying recordings, the U.S. dropped leaflets reproducing a letter from an American to a North Vietnamese commanding general. In it, the American general says that the enemy army lost in an embarrassing battle, but that his soldiers had still buried the dead and taken the wounded to safety. Captain Edward N. Vogt, the 6th Psychological Operations Battalion staff officer, said that this friendly letter led the North Vietnamese battalion and regiment commanders to be more likely to surrender. According to Vogt, quote, "This was by far the best psychological operations leaflet I ever saw by a U.S. combat unit."